Hi, Year 13. Here's the lesson on the Executive Office of the President, but we'll start with a brain spill on the UK Core Executive to get ourselves in the mood. Give yourselves 3 minutes. All right. What are the key terms that you can remember from the Core Executive? Aim for about 10. Go. Okay. Well, hopefully you got somewhere around these particular terms. But more importantly, when you look at these terms, you think, right, how did they get been put together? What's the significance of these terms in terms of how the core executive was actually created? So we'll look at this diagram. If you remember this diagram, what it shows us is where power exists within the core executive centrally with the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. But the complexity of the core executives suggests that the decisions that are made in a range of different places. For example, depending on the style of the Prime Minister, they may use bilateral meetings with individual ministers. They might use cabinet committees as a means of identifying particular policy areas they want to discuss beyond the cabinet. A particular Prime Minister may look to centralise power in number 10 through the Cabinet Office, the use of the Prime Minister's Department and special advisors. And then, of course, you've got to factor into this that individual ministers will work within the individual department and with the civil service, and many decisions are made there. Now, why is this relevant? Well, as I've suggested, there's been some centralisation of power around number 10. And if you look at Boris Johnson's administration, there have been some comments that Boris Johnson is following a model that's similar to the United States by bringing in someone who is a press secretary similar to the White House style spokesperson, by having a number 10 chief of staff, but also the relevance of special advisors through the Cummings period, and also the Cabinet Office, with the power and influence of Michael Gove there in coordinating government policy, both on Brexit and also on COVID. You can see there also the number of special advisors that are used within number 10 in the Prime Minister's department. This is all given the impression that it's almost like a White House office or an executive office of the President, which exists around the Prime Minister. And so we can draw those comparisons. When we look to presidential power, we reference to presidential authority. And one of the things that can enhance authority is the role of government colleagues. And what we're getting at there is those people who the president selects to do some of this work in Congress for him. As we know from the example of George Bush Sr. and the 1990 budget crisis, the role of Sununu there was actually detrimental to George Bush Sr. because he was unable to really develop good relations with Congress to help him get through his budget, and in fact diminished his authority rather than enhanced it. So we need to understand who's put into the executive office and what their roles play. So the executive office, what is it? Well, it's an umbrella term for the top agencies that the White House use to assist the president. It emerged in 1939 after the Brownlow Committee concluded the president needs help. As a chief executive, a solitary figure, it was considered that even with a cabinet, there wasn't enough support there for the president to be able to run a growing federal bureaucracy. This was based around the concerns of the growth of the government following the New Deal program in the 1930s, and the fact that the USA had moved from being isolationist up to this point into being a more significant player in the world stage in foreign affairs. This enhanced further in the 1950s and 60s through the growth of the Cold War. So, how do you support the president? Well, there are different components of the executive office. One being the White House office, which includes the Chief of Staff. So you need to understand who exists within the White House office and what roles they play. Another component is the OMB, or the Office of Management of the Budget. And this is significant, obviously, in the development of the budget and how it is passed through Congress. So knowing who the OMB director is and the role they play is also significant. And finally, probably best known, is the NSC, or the National Security Council. What you need to know is who's involved, the examples of how it's been used, and possibly also the National Security Advisor, and maybe some tensions that may exist with the Secretary of State. So what I need you to do is make notes on these particular areas. If we look at Trump, for example, when he took over in 2018, You can see his Chief of Staff there and his Deputy Chief of Staff. You can see some other significant figures who were advising him, such as Steve Bannon, Stephen Millen and Kellyanne Conway. Sean Spicer was also a significant figure at this point. We compare that to his present executive office and you can see how dramatically it's changed over time. Now these are appointments that are made without Senate ratification, so he can bring people in and out as he wishes, and generally what you find is a president will put people he trusts into this particular role. As you can notice there, Director of Social Media hasn't been filled, which is quite relevant considering there is no social media allowed for Trump at the moment. Okay, what I want you to do? Well, I want you to use your textbook to do your research and create your notes on the page that exists in OneNote. If you go to that page, you'll see the textbook references as a PDF, but also an article by Sharapo in the Executive Office of the President you can read, which can support the notes that you're going to make. By doing so, we'll have a seminar on the EXOP where we'll try and take down this particular question. It's a 9-mark question. Explain and analyse the ways that the EXOP supports the President, knowing what the White House Office is, the OMB and the NSC. That's your job. Good luck.